I think the Chinese themselves, I think, are very divided on that. I can't be sure about what the young Chinese generation really feel, because they have their problems. They have a lot of graduate unemployment. I mean, partly because their graduate education system was so successful. So many people went to universities, and some of them very hardworking and very bright. They graduate. If you start producing 9 million graduates per year, or nowadays more than 10 million graduates per year, how do you find 10 million jobs, new jobs for a graduate every year, a new job? So it's a problem. So many of them are really quite disappointed and unhappy. I have heard from young people, some of them who are visiting here in Singapore, and others you read about, who do feel that it was all waste of their energy and time, pointless, and they're very disillusioned. So there's all that. But do they hanker after the freedom of the West? I'm not sure. Do they believe that if they had freedom in political parties and elections, then everything would be okay? I'm not sure. So I cannot predict what will happen. All I can say is that China is not a simple place. It's a very big country, and there are lots and lots of people. How do you control that? And the different provinces are very different. In fact, it's not like the United States at all. In the United States, probably it can be divided into about 2 or 3 parts. But China actually can be divided into about 20 different provinces. And each province is like a country for a long time, because they are very big. I mean, some of those provinces are bigger than the largest country in Europe, except Russia. I mean, for example, I think the province of Henan is more populated than the whole of Germany. It has about 100 million people, one province. And even others, 70, 80 million, very common. That's bigger than most countries of Europe. And just one province. So you have a central government trying to run all these on one principle. It's not really possible. They have to allow for differences and so on. And the central government does do that. In some ways, it's a sort of semi-federal system without the right to secede. But it's federal in the sense that each party secretary appointed to a province is given quite a lot of leeway to develop the best possible way he can to make the province prosperous. And if you succeed, you get promoted. So you have every incentive to succeed. So people are doing that. So the provinces compete against each other. I mean, in manufacturing, for example, some successful product, everyone does it, and then they overproduce. Happens all the time. Same with housing, cars, or whatever they do, whatever they make, it very quickly overproduce because they don't have enough consumers themselves. They are all depending on selling and exporting in the globalized capitalist market. That the Deng Xiaoping said we must have capitalism, we must take advantage of the liberal capitalist economy for China to flourish. So if the liberal West fails, they'll cost them too. They have to pay a price too. So they don't want the West to fail. They actually don't want to. This is a paradox. They want the West to succeed, to buy their goods. And of course, the American people are having a bad Christmas now because they can't afford the toys. I mean, the tariffs and so on. In the past, they were very cheap, all made in China. All the factories went there, made in China. And the American people benefited for last 30 years. They have their cheap goods made in China. And now when all the factories are gone, they blame China for everything they lost. It's not that, it's the capitalists who made that decision. It's not China didn't cheat them. The capitalists made more money than ever from moving their factories to China. So the rich got all that much richer. But then the middle class stagnated, the poor people lost their jobs, the factories are all gone, no more unemployment everywhere. So the America pays a price. But the consumer benefited tremendously. Everything was cheap. And now, of course, they're having to sort that one out. But then the Chinese are also suffering from that. Because once you have they can't sell, they're producing as much as ever, but the market is not there. And their own consumers don't have the money, don't have enough money to consume it all. So you can see there's so many paradoxes and contradictions that both countries, both these so-called superpowers, both of them are facing enormous contradictions and that they had never faced before, at least not for a long time. Well, I think that's it's what politicians do. They want to simplify so that the ordinary man can vote for him. So he's got to say that that's evil, we are good, very easy. So that kind of politics doesn't exist in China. I mean, at least they don't need it, because the Chinese people don't really have that choice anyway. So as far as they're concerned, China is being contained, squeezed and bullied here and there, and everything is demonized. China's been demonized. And that's how it's presented and that's how they see it. They can pick up what is available, CNA and all that. The Chinese are so good. The young Chinese, they can pick it up on the social media. Whatever is available in the Western press, they can pick it up. So they know what the West is saying about them. And some of it they know is not true. So they're using these lies to find excuses to blame everything on us. It's not so simple that America's all bad. That's also the same. When they picture America as just all corrupt and money politics, everything is all for bullying other people and trying to dominate the world and be hegemonic in every attempt, interfering with everybody's business when it's none of their business. That picture of America has also been overstated. There's some truth in it, but it's overstated. And you can exaggerate to the point that they are the enemy. At the moment, I think they are so divided that I don't see how their democracy can really function properly. Because my understanding of democracy is that democracy works best when the majority are moderate and, in fact, disagree only on certain principles and details of policies, but disagree on certain things. But they're basically moderate, and they're willing to work with each other and have a kind of shared views about basic things. And you keep the extremists on one side, the other extremists on the other side, but as small minorities. The majority are in the middle. Then the democracy works because you elect people who are one party or the other. They are different, but they're not that different. The difference between a Democrat and a Republic is very hard to put on a piece of paper. Just like in Britain, between the Tories and the Liberals in the past, the Whigs and the Tories in England, it's very hard to tell the difference between the two. All of them graduate from Oxford anyway, or something. So when people are moderate in that way, they can actually talk to each other and discuss and find a common policy for the good of the country. That democracy works. What has happened, what I see now, is that there's almost nothing in between. There's no moderate. Moderate is so small. It's either way or that way, and they don't talk to each other. They see each other as the enemy. And then it doesn't work. It's a matter of winner takes all. And if I win, you can do nothing. I do everything. So that someone like Trump can be a president who can say what he likes, does what he likes, because there's no real opposition that can stop him. So there's no moderation. He can say one thing, he can be very reasonable and be totally unreasonable. It doesn't really matter. So because he knows he has one half of the population, or roughly 40% of the population, are more or less guaranteed to support. That's what he thinks anyway. So as long as he thinks like that, and it's more or less like that, then you don't have a democracy. So as long as you keep your 40%, and not everybody votes in America, you win. And so if that continues, I really wonder how that democracy will work. How do you stop that? In American history, the closest they got to that was the Civil War in the 1860s, when Abraham Lincoln fought the war over the issue of slavery. And it was also a constitutional debate between the North and the South. And millions died to find an answer to that. But of course, that in the extreme, that they just broke out, completely broken. It was sort of different in region. This time it's not quite so clear cut, but there's a bit of that. But the fact is that maybe they know how to avoid it now. They find some compromise. But at the moment, it doesn't look as if the two-party system can really bring about a kind of national consensus that both sides can genuinely and legitimately support. And at the moment, it's either one or the other. So how do you get that system to gain the credibility of people respecting it and believing it that it's a good system that will be good for everybody, that the world needs. At the moment, I would say more and more people are less and less convinced that the Americans can provide the kind of leadership they once had. I can't think of any large group of people who really believe that America still has the right to tell the world what to do. And that was something they had about 20 years ago when they won the war against the Soviet Union. They thought they really could tell the world what was right and wrong. And it didn't work. On the contrary, wherever they intervened, they failed. Look at the way they intervened in North Africa, in Tunisia, in Libya, and so on. And then they went to Syria, they went to Middle East, they went to Iraq and Afghanistan. Everything they touched didn't succeed by intervening, telling you what is good for you. They're not allowing you to do anything they don't like. They say, you can't do that. And then using military means to advance your interest. But it didn't succeed. All of them failed. In fact, the situation was worse before you intervened. Look at Iraq today. Look at Afghanistan today. Is it better than the Iraq before 2002? I mean, I don't know. So where is the credibility of this superpower?
Yeah.
Number one superpower. So I think these are probably more permanent than we like to believe. That loss of credibility, and added to that, a loss of confidence on the part of the Americans. I feel that the American leadership don't have that kind of confidence they used to have when they were so sure their intentions were good, they meant well, they were trying to save the world, they were trying to bring peace and happiness to everybody, prosperity and so on. Actually, they believed it for a long time. They believed it. Now, I'm not sure that the Americans themselves believe that. And if they don't believe it, who else will believe them? Let me say that I think there is a question of where people continue to make decisions despite the fact that they know that the world has changed and they make it according to their national interests alone, then I think the world is in big trouble. Everybody working only for their national interests, I think then we are heading towards something that would completely undermine the kind of stability that we have been used to for so long. You just say, this is my interest, and whatever you are doing is against my interest. I have to fight for my own interest. Then I think the road is a very slippery one towards total disorder. But I'm not that pessimistic. I'm a natural optimist. So I do feel that there are ways where the top leaders in the world can be rational and work out compromises. And one of the things that does look possible is that, and if I'm correct, both the United States and the Chinese don't want to fight. They would avoid war at all costs. Let us make that assumption. If you start with that assumption, which I have reason to believe is reasonable assumption. If you start with that assumption, I would say there are possibilities for working out a system whereby you continue to contend to economic competition. You contend to technological competition. You challenge each other to be better and produce a richer economy, more successful one, and people are better off. And everybody knows that you are better off and you are losing ground on that one. That will satisfy me. Both sides work towards improving their economic conditions and technological superiority, or at least equality, to be able to continue to survive confidently because they're not getting poorer and they're not getting weaker, but they're still capable of competing almost on equal terms in terms of economy and technology, science and technology. I think it is possible to envisage that kind of world appearing when both sides say, if we're not going to war, this is the way we will fight. We will fight on economy and technology. We will compete. And I will defeat you, and I'll be better than you. You will have to acknowledge that you always have to be a position lower than mine. That will satisfy me. And if both sides can work towards that end, you could have peace for a long time. No guarantee that will be forever, but at least you overcome this period when there's such a sense of insecurity and fear, especially when it's a fear and insecurity growing in the number one superpower. When the number one superpower is no longer confident, that is the danger. It's become very dangerous. But if I'm right in saying dangerous but not going to war, they don't think a military solution will solve anything. So in that case, if we avoid that, how do we do that? So you can use, as they're still doing now already, using allies and partners or whatever, they use the terminology differently, but they use them to ensure that there's a kind of economic balance, making sure that neither is over too much, too powerful. And if they can feel reasonably confident that neither side will be overwhelmingly powerful, they could continue for a long time. Like they can live with each other for a long time. If they once agree, they're not going to fight. If they really think, definitely I rule out fighting. I mean, they won't say it publicly, but both sides are agreed, and they are making that crucial foundation for all their policies. It's not, we're not going to go to war. If you take that as a beginning, then all the others are negotiable. There's room for finding ways whereby we can compete. We can show that I'm competing, I'm not giving in to you, but neither side will give in. I'm going to do this. You're better than that. I'm trying to catch up. You're better than this. I'll catch up. And both sides are doing that. And in the meantime, benefiting the rest of the world, because as they compete, they're actually trying to win friends, among others, to their support, to support their economies, to share the kind of gains that they would make in the economic and technological world. It is possible. If you minimize the politics, not to make politics everything. Everything is political. Everything is military and political. Win and it's winner takes all. It's a zero-sum game kind of thing. If you remove your framework from that zero-sum game set of calculations, there are many other possibilities. And I think in the economic and technological areas, there's room to be competitive, to be fiercely, even nationalistic, without endangering the world, with the world order. Because in the nationalistic terms of economic competition is much safer than in other areas, in technological terms even. As long as it's not aimed entirely in political and military supremacy. So I think that's what I at least I think is possible, and I don't think you should rule it out. At least this is in my mind. I don't actually believe that the Chinese want to take Taiwan by force, because they don't want to just kill a lot of Chinese. Why have to do that? What they really want to do is to be absolutely sure that Taiwan will not allow itself to be used as a base to attack China. I mean, that's what they want to be sure of, that the Taiwanese will never be an ally of the enemy, like Japan or United States. If Taiwan and the Taiwanese are not stupid, then the Taiwanese leaders, I think amongst them, they're also aware of that if they can continue to do well economically and technologically and never show enmity towards the PRC and are prepared to talk and discuss matters of common interest, but without giving up their friends like Japan or United States, but not expecting to be allies of them if they came into a conflict with China, and not be used by them as a base for attacking China. If all this somehow could be assured to the government in Beijing, I think they can live with the status quo for a long, long time. Because then it's in principle, except the fact that the Republic of China is also China. There's only one China, but they argue about which China, but the Republic of China is also China. You are People's Republic, we are Republic, but we are China, and there's only one China, happen to be under two regimes, but we're not enemies. The civil war is over. We're not going to fight anymore. Is it possible? I think it's possible. But if there's any question of people like Senator Pelosi visiting the Taiwanese and inviting the Taiwanese to do the same, and generally pretending that Taiwan is actually an independent state and treating it like that and so on, then it's provocative. So I would say that that's what the Chinese are deeply insecure about and dislike, is what the provocative acts that make China look as if they've lost Taiwan. And treating Taiwan like an independent state, completely separate from the PRC, not China anymore. There are two Chinas in that sense, and that this other China is pro-America and pro-the West, and supported by the whole West. All that, of course, the China would not accept. So can that be avoided? I don't know. But I mean, I wouldn't rule it out completely. I can't see that everybody would want to work so hard to treat Taiwan as an independent nation and work for Taiwan to be a member of the United Nations or something like that.
Yeah.
So if you don't do that, every country is committed to the idea of one China anyway, theoretically, except for about 20 countries, or less than 20 now, are committed to the idea of one China. So if you follow these things logically and legally as well, it is possible to get to a compromise that doesn't entirely satisfy everybody, but good enough because it keeps the peace and maintains a condition that makes people secure and feel safe, and nobody gets killed. No, but that's because Taiwan was always part of China as far as the Chinese are concerned. That was in the map of China. The map of China that the PRC inherited in 1949 includes Taiwan. And the Taiwanese agreed to that. Taiwanese always said there was one China. Just that their one China is in Taipei. Capital is Taipei. And in the United Nations, there was only one China. Even when the General Assembly voted for the PRC to be admitted to the United Nations, they could have admitted two Chinas. They could have said, all right, you give the Security Council position to the PRC, but the ROC is a member of the United Nations. They could have come to some compromise. It could have happened. I mean, I know it didn't happen because Chiang Kai-shek refused. Chiang Kai-shek actually, the Americans actually offered the nationalists, the ROC in Taiwan, to support them for the place as a member state of the United Nations. And Chiang Kai-shek said, no, there's only one China. We are the China. And that remained for until Chiang Kai-shek died. It continued until the end of the century. And under the Kuomintang, that was the position they took. They were the China. That's not a China. So since 1945, in fact, since Taiwan became officially a province of China in 1880 something, it became officially a province. Before that, it was part of Fujian province. Then in 1880, it became a separate province of China. And then the Japanese took it in 1895. So it was the Japanese who took it. Yes. But it was a province. When the Japanese took it, it was known as a province of China that was given over as a price to pay for having lost the war against Japan in 1895 in the Treaty of Shimonoseki. So that was then it began. But in 1945, it was agreed that everything that the Japanese took from China would be returned to China. Taiwan became part. Otherwise, how could Chiang Kai-shek have moved to Taiwan? So where is there any doubt legally? I mean, again, I talk about legally. How can there be any doubt that Taiwan is part of China? And actually, 165 countries in the world have accepted that. There's only one China. And the province, and Taiwan is a province of China. I don't know how international minded I am, but let me put it this way. I do not regard national borders as being some sanctified and unchangeable thing. I recognize it as a legal identity, which I respect, but that's all it is. It's just by law.
Yeah.
But it's got nothing to do with how I feel or who am I. It's just a legal statement saying I am a national of a certain country. So it's a legal identity. But a legal identity is just that. You can extend it to say it's a political identity. But there are so many identities. One's identity is not purely political or legal. I have a social, I have a cultural, aesthetic, moral, whatever it is, identity. And it is not There's only one identity. Multiple identities, frankly, is a norm for everybody. I mean, you can be a Frenchman and really love English culture and so on, and you can live in France and actually everything you do pertains to England. And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have a legal identity, you're a Frenchman, but what you do and everything in your life, you want to be identified with British way of life, British literature, British theatre, British, culture and so on. I mean, just as an example. And it's entirely possible if you're, particularly in Europe.